Hey provokers, it's Miss Bree. Before we even get started, I wanted to let you guys know that I am actually out of town right now. So if the setting looks a little different than usual, that's why. That's exactly why. Just to clear it up. Let's go ahead and clear it up. But I had to make sure that I got this conversation out of the way before this week was over because excuse me, there are some things happening right now that I believe deserves our attention. And honestly, that's one of the reasons, Provoking Perspectives exists. I truly believe that as Black people, we have a responsibility to stay informed about what's happening around us, not just nationally, not just politically, but culturally, economically, educationally, and within our own communities. Because you see, our awareness actually matters, perspective matters. And far too often, conversations that directly impact Black communities are discussed without Black voices, Black perspectives, and without consideration for how these issues affect us. Specifically, now, you see, I believe that it is imperative that we as a collective continue advancing our understanding of what's happening around us, whether it is in our neighborhoods, it is within our schools, it is within our workplaces that we go to and from every day. It is within the freaking government or even across the world globally. Because if we don't, you and I, understand what's happening, we can't actually effectively respond to it. And provokers, as I was going through the news this week, I actually noticed something. The stories were actually different this week. Different topics, different people, totally different circumstances. But they actually all seemed connected by one common thread. So it forced me to ask a question that I've been sitting on this entire week. And this is a very good question. What are we normalizing as Black communities, in our Black communities? I mean, like, seriously, what are we actually accepting? What are we adapting to? What are we excusing? You know what? What are we actually becoming? What are we actually becoming comfortable with that maybe deserves more examination here on this, below the surface? Because things are becoming more and more outrageous by the day. It's becoming a lot. I don't know if you guys really notice. It's becoming a lot within our schools, within our institutions, within our economy, within our own communities. And if we're not even careful, like, let's be real, if we're not careful, normalization has normalization has a way of changing all of our expectations. And I'm just keeping it real. The things we repeatedly tolerate eventually becomes the things that we stop questioning. So today, I actually want to talk about three very good stories, very big stories that really stood out to me this week. Not shocking, not because, you know, of what they might be revealing about us, our communities, and the world we're navigating right now. Well, that's actually what it is about. So, about all of that. So, let's get right into it. Now, provokers, the first story I want us to sit with today comes from an article that I was reading earlier this week on Blavity, right? Because we got to shout our black companies out. So, according to the article of Pope Leo the 14th, he recently issued one of the strongest acknowledgments of the Catholic Church's historical role in reporting and legitimizing slavery, right? My hair looks a mess. But forgive me, y'all, my hair looks a mess. But now, I just want us to sit on that for a second. Because when we hear conversations about slavery, we're not talking about ancient history here. Like, slavery only happened just a while ago, in my opinion. We're talking about something that actually shaped generations to come. We're talking about wealth. We're talking about opportunity. We're talking about families, which is very important. We're talking about systems that many people would argue are still dealing with the effects today in real time. And according to this article, Pope Leo actually acknowledged that previous church leaders participated in and legitimized the forms of slavery and oppression, which we already know. And he reportedly asked for forgiveness on behalf of the entire church. So I want to be quite fair here because I don't think, I do think honesty matters. Real talk. Acknowledgement matters. Telling the truth about history matters very deeply. And there was actually a time when many institutions refused to even acknowledge their role in certain injustices. So, yes, acknowledgement has so much value. But here's exactly where my mind went with all of this. What does accountability actually look like? Because I think a lot of Black people have heard apologies. We have heard so many acknowledgments before. But at what point does accountability move beyond words? At what point does it move beyond the freaking symbolism? At what point does it create something tangible? And I'm genuinely asking because if we're talking about healing, repair, and justice, then we should we should actually process that. And what does it actually even look like? What responsibility do institutions have when they acknowledge historical harm? I want you guys to think about that for a second. And, as Black communities, we have become so accustomed to delayed accountability that we have started accepting it as normal. Because that's actually something worth thinking about. Like, that's real food for talk here. Now, speaking of things that should stop and make us think, because, we're constantly thinking. That's what we do as provokers. Let's talk about education for a minute. All right? I don't want to lose you here. I actually came across another story this week reported on the Black Information Network, right? And according to reports, a teacher was fired after hanging a black doll by its neck in front of students. And I kind of exaggerated that because that is a very big deal. Like that's a big deal. Now, when I first read that headline, I had to pause all the way because, regardless of what explanation follows a story like that, we cannot pretend that symbols don't matter here. History matters, context matters, and impact matters, especially when your kids, my kids, and other children are simply involved in the picture. You know, one thing I actually think that we underestimate, well, what we underestimate is how much young people absorb from the environments all around them. We typically don't think about things like that. Schools are actually supposed to place our, place put our kids in places where they feel safe. Provide an atmosphere like that. Students should feel respected when they go to school. Students should feel valued when they go to school. They should feel seen. And when incidents like this particular one happen, it raises so many questions than just what one person did here. It raises questions about cultural awareness, right? When it comes to Black people. It raises questions about training. It raises questions about whether people truly understand the historical weight attached to certain actions and imagery here. Because let's be honest, let's be honest, that's what we're here to do. For Black communities, imagery connected to any sort of hanging, lynching, and racial violence it's not something that exists in a vacuum. Please don't. I'm sorry, y'all. It's not. There's history actually attached to that. There's trauma attached to that. There's memory attached to that. And it's even attached to us in different ways. There's pain attached to that. And that's why conversations like this one matters. Because too often people focus exclusively on intent these days. They say, well, maybe that actually wasn't the teacher's intentions. Like, have you thought about that? And I understand why people really ask that question. Quite frankly, it gets on my nerves. Really. In my head, I was like, no. But yeah, moving along. But, I'm just want to say impact deserves attention too, overall. Because whether something is intentional or not, the impact can still be very real. The emotional impact is very real. The cultural impact is real. The educational impact of those kids that I spoke about, are real. The community impact is real. And maybe one thing we should stop normalizing is the expectations that Black people constantly have to explain why certain things are harmful in the first place. Maybe we should actually normalize cultural awareness more. Maybe we should normalize education. Maybe we should even normalize understanding. We should normalize understanding not only of each other, but understanding of our history so deeply enough to avoid repeating, sorry guys, to avoid repeating these harmful mistakes. So that brings me to the last story I want to talk about. I want us to talk about this last story because it's super important. And honestly, this one hits very close to home for a lot of people here. So, according to another article that I found on Blavity this week, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, one of us, recently sounded the alarm about Black economic hardship affecting Black communities and argued that the Black economy is actually under attack. Now, regardless of where anybody stands politically, I think most people can agree on one thing here. A lot of families are feeling pressure right now. That's the main thing. We're all feeling pressure out here. People are feeling it at the grocery store. They are feeling the pressure at the gas pump. People are feeling it when their rent is due. I know I am, for sure. It's tough. It's tough out here. People are feeling it when they are trying to save their money for a rainy day or a vacation. People are feeling it when they are trying to start their own businesses. People are feeling it when they are trying to build something for their children and their grandchildren. And I don't have kids yet, but for those who I know that are parents, I see them. I really do. It's really hard. And everything just seems so freaking expensive today. Everything seems harder to maintain. Everything seems harder to even stretch now. And that's always been a challenge. And for many Black people, financial stability feels further away than it did than just a few years ago. And that's a fact. So here's the question. Here's the question that I often find myself asking all the time. Have we normalized struggle? I mean, seriously. Have we become so accustomed to surviving that we've stopped talking about thriving collectively as a whole? Like, what can we do to make Black people better? Have we stopped that? Because there is a difference here. Survival is what gets you through the month. Survival is making it to next week. Survival is figuring things out, taking things one day at a time. But thriving is actually different. Thriving means ownership. Thriving means opportunity. Thriving means economic mobility. Thriving means building something that lasts beyond you and me. And I think sometimes Black communities spend so much time fighting to survive that we don't always have enough room to imagine what thriving could actually look like together. Which is exactly why economic conversations matter. Economics. This is why that matters. Because economics impacts education. Economics impacts healthcare. Economics impacts your housing, my housing. Economics impacts entrepreneurship for my go-getters out there. Economic impacts the opportunities that you and I have. Economic impacts nearly every area of our life today. And if we are actually serious about changing outcomes, then we have to be willing to have these deeper conversations about economics too. Not just survival anymore, but ownership. Not just getting by, simply getting by each and every day, but building. Not just reacting anymore, but actually creating. So, as I reflect on all of these stories, I keep coming back to the same question here. What are we actually normalizing as Black communities? Are we normalizing delayed accountability? Are we normalizing cultural ignorance? Are we normalizing economic struggle? Or are these moments challenging us to raise our expectations for ourselves, our institutions, and our future? Because what we normalize eventually becomes what we expect. And what we expect eventually shapes our culture down the line. And our culture actually shapes our future. Can I get an amen? So I want to hear from you guys. What are some things that you believe Black communities have started normalizing that deserves a deeper conversation? So let me know. Drop your comments and your thoughts below in the comment section. And do not forget to subscribe to this channel. Let's actually talk about it. I am Miss Bree, and this is Provoking Perspectives. Provoking thought, shifting perspectives. And I'll see you in the next conversation.